unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, where every bean tells a story of adventure. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY.
Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Your World of Creativity. And today we're beginning to wrap up our 7th year of the podcast. Here we are at episode 399. Oh my gosh, who would have thought back in 2019 when I turned the microphone on with my good friend G. Mark Phillips in his living room, and we started this thing called a podcast, and we were doing it on this thing called Zoom that we had never heard of before. And we said, I wonder how this will work. It's very fitting today that I welcome in a guest who perfectly captures this whole essence of growth and transformation and trying new things, even how messy it could be. Please welcome in Rachel Burr. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me.
And fitting also that we stamp our creative passports in San Francisco today. We've been around the world in all sorts of creative capitals, talking to creative practitioners everywhere. And San Francisco, always known as a hotbed of creativity and innovation. Rachel really specializes in human-centered leadership, guiding executives to their own self-awareness, empathy, and relationship intelligence. Her book is called Butterfly Goo. And it really captures this idea of leadership growth through a caterpillar's transformation. And Rachel, I think starting there, we often think of this metaphor as, oh, look how beautiful the butterfly is and how colorful. But we forget the messy, gooey, nonlinear, true deep transformation. Wow, that must have been somewhat painful. And the goo, what a great word for leadership. Tell us about the metaphor itself for you and how the metamorphosis goo stage really means something for us creative leaders.
I love that. It's funny. The butterfly is probably the most recognizable metaphor for transformation. And don't get me wrong, butterflies are beautiful. Big fan. And that beauty often it distracts us from the arduous journey it goes through for transformation. We obviously have our own arduous journeys, but if we think we're supposed to be born butterflies, as opposed to going through the process, we are not only going to be sorely disappointed, we're going to be discouraged and really feel like maybe I can't do this. So let's look at the reality of what happens. This little caterpillar spins itself a cocoon, and I will take a moment because my brother's an entomologist, and he insists that moths spin a chrysalis or the caterpillar, and then moths are in a cocoon. Sorry, butterflies are in a chrysalis. I said, that's great. The cocoon is a better metaphor, and nobody aspires to be a moth. So what happens is the caterpillar goes in, it spins itself, this cocoon or chrysalis, and it essentially dissolves into this green gelatinous goo. It is going down to its fundamental building blocks, the core of who it is. And it takes those building blocks and then it builds something new. And I think 2 things are important about this. One, this is an arduous journey for the little guy. Now, for him, it's all instinct. He doesn't get to choose. We have to choose, which in a lot of ways is worse. But he goes in there and he breaks down into those core building blocks. That goo is not just something we have to tolerate. It's actually essential to the transformation and to our transformation. And the struggle, even when the butterfly is about to emerge from the cocoon, it has to struggle to get out. And part of that struggle is actually what helps strengthen its wings to fly. So a lot of times we want this smooth, clean path. First of all, nobody's ever watched an exciting movie or Netflix series and thought, oh, the hero or heroine should just have a smooth, clean path.
Yes.
Nobody would watch that. But that transformation, that work is not only, it's normal. And that's the thing people don't recognize. It's normal. And everything that caterpillar needed to become a butterfly, it took into that cocoon. So transformation isn't about changing ourselves into something we're not. It's about bringing out the best of who we are, to be who we want to be, the leader we want to be, to live the life we want to live. it is really about our personal transformation because leaders are people and we all have our desire for transformation or growth or change in our lives just as people.
Yes. And Rachel, I guess as a title, as a vocation, as a bio, you call yourself an executive coach, a leadership consultant. I couldn't help but think to stretch the metaphor a bit. The caterpillar doesn't really need a coach to get unstuck, but somehow we do, that it's not all instinct and it's not all nature's way, if we
Mhm.
could say that. But sometimes we need a little encouragement or professional guidance to break through. Why do you think that is, and where do you think you come in that process?
I think the little caterpillar has the luck of no conscious awareness.
Mm.
And don't get me wrong, big fan of conscious awareness. In fact, working with my clients, that's a big part of what we do, recognizing what we do and why we do it and bringing that to the table in a conscious way so we can shift, what's happening to get us to where we want to go. For me,
And
go ahead.
oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, for me, one of the critical things about coaching is a lot of people confuse it with advice. And my goal is not, everybody has a journey. We're building our path to wherever it is we want to go, to our transformation. And as a coach, I come alongside and I help you challenge yourself, become aware of what you're doing. Again, going into that caterpillar, people have what they need to transform their life. It doesn't mean we don't need additional skills or experience or knowledge. We do. But too often I see people try to fit themselves into a cookie cutter as though little stars, that everybody's a perfect little star. And when we do that, when we actually push the cookie cutter into the dough, we leave all of this goodness. And we do that as people. We leave some of the best parts of who we are. So for me, I come alongside, I help leaders understand, who are you at your core? What are your values? What are your strengths? What are your passions, your interests, your skills, experiences, all of those things? And how do you want to bring that to wherever you want to go? So we come along and I help it. I'm more of a guide. I'm not there to tell them what to do because, first of all, nobody can tell you what kind of life you want to live. And second of all, like the Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, she had to figure it out on her own, right? Glenda told her at the end, you always had the power to go
Mhm.
home. And the Scarecrow says, why didn't you tell her? And she's, because she wouldn't have believed me. We have to figure it out. That is when we truly embrace, not just agree with someone else. Oh, yes, that's what I should do. We truly embrace it and own it, and that path becomes ours.
So good. Rachel, it's become almost a truism now that leaders get promoted, because of their technical expertise and knowledge, not necessarily because of their people skills. And certainly enough has been said and written about emotional intelligence that we all need. Somehow that's become a soft skill, as if wouldn't that be a nice to have when it's really the whole game sometimes. But we've all seen it in our careers. You're a great programmer, you're a great designer, you're a great engineer. So why don't you become the supervisor? Why don't you become the
Mm.
manager? Why don't you were a great bookkeeper, now you're the CFO and have 100 people that report to you. What is it about that transformation, even within your job, within your skill set? That's a butterfly transformation in and of itself, isn't it?
I would say that's a catalyst.
Okay.
That it's one of those where we have to choose to change. Now, if I'm promoted and I truly want to be a good leader, and I don't believe there are people out there that just want to be terrible leaders.
Right.
I do believe there are people out there that when a ladder is put in front of us, we climb it. We don't think about where it's going or if it's someplace we want to be, we climb it. And to your point, you can take people who are amazing individual contributors and who are creating great value for the organization, and you take them out of that role to make them a leader, and they flounder and they're not even happy. That's not even what they really want to do, but that's the only path to advancement that they see. So I would say that kind of change or want that shift is a catalyst. And one of the challenges with it is that, to your point, we assess readiness or we assess who we want as our bench strength or our successor based on technical skills or the skills it takes to be functionally successful, to your point. CFOs being financially savvy, and HR and operations and sales. And I'm not saying that leaders don't need to have an understanding of a
Sure.
lot of what the business, especially business sense. But those are not people skills. And to your point, this whole idea of soft skills, I hate that term, and I can hear it from your voice that you don't like it either.
Right. Yeah. I said it a little pejoratively.
Yes. And it's funny. I try to call it like critical intangibles, but I don't think that's going to catch on. But it is. And it's some of the hardest things to learn. And I was just talking to someone this morning that this idea of emotional intelligence, people confuse that with this soft, squishy, I make decisions based on what people feel as opposed to what's right for the business. That's not what this is at all. And that's one of the biggest challenges, that words don't mean a lot of times what we think they mean, or there's disagreement on what they mean. And really what it is, emotional intelligence and understanding emotions is understanding us, understanding how we're responding emotionally, understanding how other people will, so we can work with each other. It's information, it's data. And this idea that we can leave it at the door, it's just BS.
Right.
The
Right.
shorter part there.
Yes.
And if we ignore it, it's to our own detriment. And when it comes to our transformation, there is something there telling us. Now, there is the logical part of us and what we want, very important. There is the emotional part that for me is a lot of times information that's ticking and tying in the back of our brain, but hasn't yet been able to bubble up to conscious awareness or even to our language. And so the way I look at it is, how do you bring those two things together so that they are both contributing to the decisions you're making, and at a minimum, they are both part of the conversation?
You also talk in the book about fear of the transformation. You're thinking that the caterpillar somehow, or the butterfly, is afraid to launch. And I thought the first time I learned that song by Semisonic, Closing Time, was really about a birth. It's time to close this chapter. You've got to get out into the world. And there's something about this. It's time to get out in the world.
Yeah.
Even with creatives, you're going to have to hit the send button. You're going to have to hit publish. You're going to have to hit launch the song, whatever your creative endeavor is. How do you work with clients in thinking about birthing the idea and overcoming the fear factors?
And isn't that true with the creative part? I know with this book, you have to get to a point where it feels like your baby and you have to be ready to put it out in the world. Just people have to launch their children
Yes.
into the world. Everything has that moment of closing and moving on to something else. Now, here's the deal. A lot of us fight parts of that really diligently. And in the book, I call it the cast iron skillet of change, that we can push against it. We can, we're getting messages and saying, I think your brain is telling you, I think you really want to do this, or I think you want to do that. And we ignore it and we ignore it. And finally, the universe just bashes us over the head. And even then, we can still ignore it. I think we have to recognize that life is a series of births and rebirths. That it's funny because a lot of it, as I refer tongue in cheek to Joseph Campbell's A Hero's Journey, which is the foundation, for those who don't know, of a lot of movies. He was a philosopher and writer, and the idea that while all our journeys are unique, that we go through these similar stages. And one of them is this birth out of the first part of the cocoon. And I think that when we recognize that that's part of it, there's always resistance to the call. That's the first part. When you look at all the great stories of Grimm's fairy tales, mythic adventures from Greek mythology, etc., Star Wars, whatever, we all resist the call. And that is based on fear, that we convince ourselves that our lives are good enough just as they are, because we're afraid of the unknown. It's a leap, because that butterfly has no idea what's outside that cocoon. None. And again, it doesn't get a choice. The other thing that's great about it is that butterfly, that little caterpillar, has one butterfly. One. And we can have multiple butterflies as we go through. We keep evolving. I like to say that inside every butterfly is another hungry caterpillar. And we are also programmed for threat response, right? It has served us really well for thousands of years. And unfortunately, it served us really well, that whole analogy of the tiger jumping out of the bush. But now a lot of our changes are more nuanced and we still respond in a lot of the same way. And that goes back to emotional intelligence and recognizing that a lot of times we're making decisions based on fear. Instead of heading towards what we want, we're running away back to the safety of our comfort zone to avoid what we don't want. So we're running away and we convince ourselves that our lives as they are, it's good enough. And denial is an amazing analgesic.
So good. I'd like to talk about your own creative process, Rachel, in developing and writing and publishing the book and the experience that you had. And to get to that point where you said, send, launch, approved, print. When did you feel that the work had been, some people say good enough, some people say this is where I want to be, it's time to launch. How did you feel when you reached that stage?
It's funny. My launch, I would actually say, we'll start it actually when I started writing. By the time I got there, this thing took on a life of its own. And I felt like this thing it was gonna launch itself. But the launch for me was really that point of the letting go, the kind of catalyst for this journey. I had been fighting this, I think, for years, writing this book. I knew I wanted to write it, but I was trying to convince myself that what I should write was a book on coaching. What I should write was some kind of business related book. And I didn't want to write any of those things. And it took a little series, what I like to call clicks. Now and I came up with that more around, if you think about an old combination lock, the lock doesn't just spring open. That's what we focus on, right? We focus on the lock springing open. We focus on the butterfly emerging from the cocoon. But really what happens is all of these little steps in the background, all the little clicks that eventually lead to the lock opening. And the clicks are different for different people. And it doesn't even mean that there have to be a certain set of clicks. We may not even recognize them. It may be where I was trying to figure this out and sometimes force myself down the wrong path. I went to writing workshops. I read books about writing. I got a coach. I started writing. I stopped writing. Maybe not a click. And at some point, there were a few things that I recognized that helped me break open. And that actually is the book itself. Even before that, it was the breaking open of my own transformational, messy, gooey journey. Humorous, hopefully, for everybody. But for me, there was a moment, and I don't remember exactly the last click that sprung open the lock, but the minute that happened, I went to a desk, I started writing. I didn't stop for 9 months, some days like 9 hours a day. But by then, it had taken on its life of its own. I felt like this book had been trying to write itself through me for a really long time. And I finally stopped fighting it.
So good. Rachel, I've got a couple of questions left here, but I want to make sure this is a good place maybe to pause and let people know where to find you, where to find your book, learn more about your work.
Yes, my book is butterflygoobook.net. You can also just go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever your books are sold. You can always order it. You can also find me on LinkedIn in terms of a lot of my coaching and things like that. Right now, I'm really focused on the book and just loving it. So butterflygoobook.net.
Great. I'll put that link in the show notes and everybody can find it there. But as we turn the corner here, I can't help but think about the first 5 seconds that we introduced to each other. Humor was in the cards. Where do you put that kind of humor? I think about the connection to the word humanity even as a way for leaders to engage and communicate and even express empathy, perhaps. Does humor have a place in leadership?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, like anything, it's how you use it. Humor is not good or bad. Power is not good or bad. Electricity is not good or bad. It depends on how you use it. When I was a child, I remember sticking a barrette in to an outlet and shocking myself. My dad was so mad because he had to get it out. That's a bad use of electricity.
Yes.
And entirely my fault. So humor is one of those things, a lot of times people back away from it because they don't understand it or they think it is targeted at someone, that it's used in a way that sarcasm in a way that it, it's undermining or it's doing something unpleasant or making someone else feel small. Absolutely. That's a horrible way to use humor. So what I've learned is humor, if used correctly, is a way to open up and connect with each other. That there is a vulnerability in humor, maybe not for us as an audience sitting and watching like Chris Rock or somebody doing, I love Sarah Millican as comedians, but for them, it's vulnerable. And for us with each other, there's an opening to it. There's a taking down of our defenses. And so I use obviously a lot of self-deprecating humor. And I use humor about a situation. It's not about someone else, unless it's one of those where we're all sitting around as friends and we know each other and we know that balance. And it's either an explicit agreed upon way of engaging or it's an implicit way of engaging. But in the workplace, it is an art and it's not something to be shied away from. And you also have to recognize your level of skill with it. So how are you coming across? How are you using it to connect as opposed to distance yourself? And that self-deprecating piece or the situation can be a great way to do it. I will say as one caveat, as a woman, we do have to be careful about self-deprecating humor because it can be taken too far or it can be seen differently. Now, whether we like that's the way this all works or not, we can argue. We have to be careful. But I think one of the biggest pieces first is to be able to laugh at ourselves, not only with others, but with like when I'm sitting here alone and I screw up or I'm going through that goo, I have to be able to laugh because honestly, I don't know how people get through the day. I don't know how they get through their life.
So true. Rachel, what a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing not only some of the insights about the transformation, about the butterfly's transformation, but also the messiness of the creative process that even you went through to create the book. I love the fact that you considered the launch, the start, not the publication date, but rather the beginning of the writing. That's a good way to view it. And very encouraging for those of us who have creative projects all over the desk. Now's the time to start, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for coming on the podcast and helping us wrap up this milestone season, our 7th year of your world of creativity and all the insights. And I love that you helped us move beyond advice. Coaching has become that, do I really need a coach? I just need to buckle down and get the work done. But sometimes we need the encouragement and the insight and the skill that comes from a coach. I really appreciate you bringing that today. And listeners,
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming along, and I appreciate all the comments, the subscribing, rating, reviewing, all the things that you do with podcast. You've helped really take our podcast to another level. And as we begin next week, our 8th year of these creative conversations, we'll keep traveling around the globe to talk to practitioners about how they get inspired, certainly. And I'd like to offer you a free ebook of collection of some of these conversations. It's called A World of Creativity, and you can get a free download when you visit mark-stinson.com. And of course, thanks to our sponsor, White Cloud Coffee. They've been fueling these creative conversations, and listeners, you can enjoy 10% off your first order at whitecloudcoffee.com. Just use the word creativity as a discount code when you visit. And join us again next time. We'll talk about organizing ideas and gaining the confidence and connections to launch our work out into the world. So until then, I'm Mark Stinson, and we'll keep unlocking your world of creativity.